Welcome to the Bros of Gardening. I'm your host, Mike Westphal, joined always by my co-host, Daniel Van Dyke. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, bud. We're finally in April, which is exciting. We've been waiting for it now. I feel like we've been counting down. So I'm ready to get rolling here now that the weather's going to be consistently better. We've had some great days, but I'm excited about it.
It is spring, and we're joined, of course, by Alex, who will help guide us through this topic today, which is getting to know your veggies.
Yes, it's that time of the year already.
I know, it's crazy.
All
It's
right.
been a busy few weeks.
All right, so Mike, what are the 3 easiest vegetables someone would grow successfully in their first ever season of vegetable planting?
So that's a good question. I mean, it's where do you start, right? You know, hey, I want to grow something to eat and I want to grow some edible plants, and vegetables are usually the first thing that people look at. So I will start with my favorite, which is cole crops, which is not really the season we're in right now, right? I mean, we're getting warmer and people are starting to think about tomatoes, and so I'll talk about that in a second. But I will just throw a shout out to cole crops, which are COLE. Although most people call them COLD, cold crops, because they grow in cooler weather. And I always recommend those, especially for our area, typically, because it is one of the easiest crops to grow. So there you're talking about spinach, lettuce, beets, turnips, carrots, broccoli, the list goes on and on. But if I were ever going to give somebody the first vegetable ever, and it happens to be, September, October, I will push spinach for sure. It's one of the easiest things. And spinach, people kind of are like, I don't like spinach, but spinach is amazing. It's super, super healthy. And it is one of the easiest plants to grow because you pick the outer edges of the leaves. So you just pick off the outer leaves and eat those, and it keeps on producing new leaves from the center. It's like one of the easiest things to grow. It's awesome. So I'll get off my cole crop kick because I know people want to know about which really, true vegetables would you start with. And so I'll do the basic ones: tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers. So those would be the 3 that I typically would recommend because most people are going to use those. They want to grow them. Most people eat tomatoes. Most people like cucumbers. If I throw in an eggplant, how many people really love eggplant? Right. I'm sure there's lots of people. I personally don't use eggplant a lot. So I've grown eggplant. It's actually a pretty easy one to grow. But tomatoes are what people want to grow. So then let's get a little bit more specific. If you're going to grow a tomato, and it's the first one, pick something that's easy. So like a cherry tomato, like Sun Gold is one of our favorite varieties because it's easy to grow, it produces a lot, and it doesn't require a ton of maintenance. Cucumbers, I would grow a cucumber, but I do have a little bit of a warning there, which is they tend to have a bumper crop. They tend to produce a ton of cucumbers and then they tend to fizzle. They can get powdery mildew. They can get some other issues. But cucumbers are pretty prolific early, and so you get this big crop and you feel great about it, and so it's a lot of fun. What I might suggest there is like more of a pickling cucumber, which you probably see them. I mean, all of a sudden they seem to become popular in the supermarkets. You start to see these smaller, little bite-size kind of cucumbers. Those are pickling cucumbers. They don't have to be pickled. They're just normal cucumbers if you don't pickle them. And then peppers. Peppers are a tricky one. I grew them for years because you want a big bell pepper, right?
Yeah.
Well, those take a little bit more time to produce, especially if you want the red or the orange or the yellow ones. The green ones aren't as hard, but they take a ton of sun. You need as much sun as you can possibly get them. And then if you want them to turn red or orange or yellow, you need to wait late into the season to really get that color to turn on you. So what I always throw out is some of these smaller snacking peppers are amazing. Carmen pepper is one of the best. Banana peppers are awesome. They taste just like a regular bell pepper. They're sweet peppers. They're not spicy peppers. And they are very prolific and very easy to grow. And you get them even if you don't have quite 8 hours of sunlight. So there's lots of different opportunities within some of those major categories to be very successful and easy. I mean, there's green beans. There's, I'm trying to think of what's the one that you eat now where you just like kind of suck the beans out of the pod.
Shoot.
Edamame.
Edamame, yes. Oh my gosh.
So I knew it would come to me. So edamame,
right.
There's a lot of different types of vegetables, obviously. And then, the squash and the zucchinis, but the easy kind of ones that most people want to grow are tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers. And I say start there because we can help you. I just might pick specific varieties, like go back to the tomato example. Start with a cherry tomato because if you're trying to grow a whopper tomato, like a gigantic tomato, that plant might only produce 5 or 6 huge tomatoes. So get something like a Better Boy or a Celebrity. These are varieties that produce smaller tomatoes that are still good slicing tomatoes.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a hamburger slice out of it, but you're going to get, a good slicing tomato for salads or for hamburgers. So there's lots and lots of different options. And I just love cherry tomatoes because they're easy and you just go pick them right off the vine and they're super simple and super tasty. And there's nothing better than eating your own vegetables out of your own garden. There's nothing better tasting than that.
Well, and I feel like what happens in a lot of the landscape realm is we'll have somebody who will come in, prep all their beds, do their landscape, and they're like, hey, leave me an open area. Because a lot of times vegetable gardening, that's not really what we necessarily do. Of course. And we'll get into it a little bit more later on from the landscape side, but we might prep the area, build the area, get the area ready, but then really that's going to come down to the customer, the homeowner, and they're going to want to plant and do, because they're the upkeep, the maintenance of them. And so tomatoes, and I remember, just one of the things is we did that. They had these huge tomatoes is what they started with, and they were so excited. They were getting big, but they had never grown them before. You said, from a first time standpoint, and they didn't stake them. And then they all broke and they toppled over. And so I think, like Mike said, those are definitely the ones that we have people mention to us all the time are those big three. I know edamame is supposed to be like a superfood or something. It's like a bunch of protein and it's supposed to be super healthy for you. So, I think it's awesome. And like I said, I always love when people do that because to me, it also kind of says, okay, these people like to garden. They want to get their hands dirty. They're going to put in the work. And that usually correlates to maintaining a landscape and if they're willing to get out and do those types of things. And so I would defer to Mike here too, for sure. And say, whatever's the easiest to start with, because you don't want to be, dissuade from trying it again. If you put in the work and the effort and then they break or they don't produce or you only get a couple of here or there, start easy so you get motivated and then get a little more adventurous.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think you asked like a few weeks ago, like, would you do starter plants or seeds? Yeah. And that kind of goes the same with vegetables. It's like, do some starter plants, just try a few varieties, plant as much as you can for your space. But then you probably find out. I mean, the first year I did it, I planted 10 tomato plants. Did I need 10 tomato plants? I think I'm the weird family dynamic, which is I'm the only one that eats tomatoes in my family. So then I had tons of tomatoes.
So yes, you did.
So it was great for me, but nobody else. And then, everybody wanted the strawberries that I happened to plant that year. And so that was the winter. I should have planted more strawberries. So it's a little bit of planning, like we always talk about.
You have to do some more user research.
Right. I was growing for myself.
Well, Daniel, when you're planting a yard, and I know we kind of just touched on that a little, how can someone incorporate a vegetable garden without making it feel out of place?
Well, so that's really what it is. And so what we do, and it all goes back down to how much you want to grow. I mean, if you're trying to grow all the different vegetables, I mean, you're going to need some space and then you're going to need sun. So that's kind of the first thing is, okay, what do you want to grow? How much do you want to grow? And once you know that, and it all goes back to the planning phase, we talk about it all the time, because then you're going to want to find some sunlight, and that's one of the issues at my house now is I don't have enough sunlight to really grow them. So basically what I then will want to do is, if this is an area, if you've had vegetable gardens before and you're like, I'm trying to build like my own personal kind of, I want to go all in. There's a different way to do it. So what we really do is we try to make the area make sense. We try to plan it out to where it looks really nice because that area is going to be there year round. The vegetables are going to come and go, and the vegetables don't look great. I mean, they're more functional, it's not, what you're trying to do is get that fruit, get that vegetable, whatever the case may be, so that it yields that. But what we're really trying to do is dress the area up. So like you said, it looks like it belongs. It looks like it was already part of the plan. And it also looks good. So you can do different ornaments in there. It can be like an obelisk or a fountain or something else that will kind of be more of a focal point from an aesthetic standpoint, as opposed to the functionality of the actual vegetable garden. If you really want to go all out, one of the coolest ones we did is we did kind of a quadrant. We broke it up into 4 quadrants. We had a walking path in between of like a broken flagstone. So a very natural, rustic feel. If you're doing vegetable gardenings, that's a lot of times what you're going for. And then we did these brick raised vegetable beds, wrapped them in tie parts. So I mean, the beds and the walkways and all that were really the aesthetic, the focal point.
Exactly.
But these beds were super functional. They had a ton of space to grow whatever you wanted. But I mean, that was a pretty big undertaking. I mean, they're definitely committing their resources from a financial standpoint and from a time and energy standpoint. Because if you don't want to do all that, and then if you're like, this was a phase. I did it for 1 year.
Right.
Well, now you have these 4 huge built-in beds. So I'm not saying that's for everybody, but if you know you love that, but even just if you, like I said with that other person, all we really did was we landscaped around it. We put some evergreen shrubs behind it, but we left this kind of open patch for them to play with. And it was the sunniest spot in the yard. It was pretty conveniently located to the backyard because, again, you know, I think we'll probably do a podcast on herbs at some point. So they were big into herbs, but with the vegetables, you don't want to be too far away from the kitchen. You know, if you can be conveniently located, you know, that all those types of things kind of start to come into play. And that's what I would say is just make that plan and try to dress it up with maybe some permanent, whether that's evergreen plantings, whether that is, you know, block features, block walls. Try to make it so that it has some year-round interest because there are different things you can plant throughout the year, but even when those things are doing exactly what they should do and thriving, they're not exactly going to be an attractive focal point. It's much more of a functional garden.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. And I think, I mean, great points. And I think vegetable plants in general are not the prettiest plants.
Sure.
So no, you're not going to put on a show-stopping display with your vegetable plants. However, some of those hard built-in fixtures, what I would call like hard goods or hardscape, is, you know, obelisks and statuary and bird baths and all of these things that you can put in as elements. So when your plants are growing around it, it still looks really good.
Yep.
So there's lots of different ways to do it. I mean, it's in my my hopeful plans in my own yard to build some raised beds that are focal points that I can use, but also look good. So when, you know, I happen to maybe not do vegetables 1 year because I'm too busy, it still looks good.
Yep.
So that's kind of what you're going for. And there's, you know, the whole foodscaping thing, which was a huge craze a few years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great for like, you know, Swiss chard. We sell that as an ornamental.
Yep.
It's also an edible plant. Mustard greens, used as an ornamental, but also edible. There's lots of plants, obviously, that are edible that can be worked into a landscape design and can be on like kohlrabi. And I mean, all the lettuces just look cool. So if you have a whole row of them, garlic, garlic flowers, onions, those types of things. So there's a huge assortment of things that you can do.
Now, would someone want to use maybe containers for veggie gardening? And if there are, would you say, would there be certain sizes of containers that would actually kind of encourage more growth versus others? Like, where would you say they should start?
I'm glad you asked because we're sitting here talking about all of these things and you're like, man, I mean, if you're a listener and you don't have a whole lot of yard space, you're like, what am I doing?
What are you going to do?
You can grow in containers for sure. And there's so many new types of vegetables now that can grow in containers even easier. But let's say you wanted to plant a full-grown tomato. Okay. You probably need somewhere around a 15-gallon pot, somewhere around 2 cubic feet of soil. So you think, you know, okay, when I buy a big bag of soil, there's usually a cubic foot size bag of soil. So I need to get a container that at least can hold 2 of these bags, which is typically about a 15-gallon size. We talk about 15 gallons because we're in the nursery industry, and so we just know what that is. But, you know, talk to your local garden center, come and talk to us, and we'll help you kind of find the right container size. But there are new tomatoes that are like a husky red cherry, or there's like the tumbling toms and all of these different things that you can grow in containers as far as vegetables goes. And I go back to the cole crops again. You can certainly grow spinach and lettuce, and if you got a deeper pot, beets and carrots and turnips you can grow in containers. Potatoes, you know, potatoes is one of the best things to grow in containers because you can get to the potatoes. You know, potatoes go through a phase. You plant them, they're vining plants. It looks kind of crazy, kind of, you know, you see sweet potato vine as a annual plant, but you can actually plant sweet potatoes that are edible or just regular potatoes. And you can grow those in a pot because then you can reach down into the soil and pull out new potatoes, which are like your smaller potatoes. And then you can let some of them get bigger and be full, you know, russet potatoes or bacon potatoes at the end of the season. So there's lots of different things you can do. Containers certainly don't limit you. What ties into being successful with containers, but also in the ground, is feeding. Feeding is extremely important. So you definitely are going to want to feed vegetables because they require a lot of food to produce all of these fruits that we're eating. So, you know, you think about a tomato plant, think about a big, you know, red, juicy tomato hanging on the vine. It takes a lot to produce that. So you got to constantly feed it. There's lots of tips and tricks out there when it comes to vegetable gardening. So talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends that maybe have done it before. That's where I learned all of these tips and tricks. Talk to the garden center. You know, I would say a majority of our employees, our green team out there, have grown vegetables. And so probably have some tips and tricks that they've tried that have worked. That's what I love about vegetable gardening is kind of the social aspect of it, of sharing, some of your
what works, what doesn't,
right,
trials and tribulations.
And then sharing your success, which is, hey, I've got 400 tomatoes. I planted too many. You want some tomatoes? So
which is what Mike happened when he had 10 of them.
That's right.
Yep. Feed is really important, especially in containers, but lots of options in containers for sure.
Yeah. So I think for us, we see containers a ton, even, because a lot of times, what are we planting out? It might be a hardscape, it might be a patio, something like that, but they still want to be able to grow vegetables. So a lot of times they're going to take, again, I talk about proximity to the kitchen. You talk about area, the most desirable area of the yard. Well, usually that's going to be where you want to put a sitting area. And maybe you want to grow just a couple things here and there. You don't want to dedicate this huge mass area to vegetable gardening. And so that's where we'll see people come in, even decorative containers. They might be ceramic containers, whatever the case may be. And they're going to grow. I mean, so again, we'll place them. We might not plant them for them. But I think, that well-drained, loose soil is perfect for the vegetable gardening. And so that's where we see a lot of people doing the container grown vegetables is because it might be on a patio where they don't want to leave, they can't get to the ground. They just cover the ground up, but they still want to be able to do that, enjoy it. And it might be a really sunny spot in the yard that's great for growing that. Which is why they put their patio there, because they also want to enjoy that sunlight. But so, you can mix in different containers, and we've seen people have a lot of success. And what's funny is they'll start with one, and then all of a sudden we come back the next year and there's 3, and then the next year there's like 7, and they just keep expanding it to the point where they're like, after a while, like, all right, let's create like an actual vegetable garden. Right. So you can kind of see, like Mike was saying, you don't have to do it all at once. Play with it a little bit, and then if you like it, which we've seen plenty of times, they start to expand, and then more containers. So it's a really easy way to get started, especially if you're not sure. Absolutely. And then if you love it, then create that big raised vegetable garden. That might be a bigger investment of time and energy and resources. So that's what I always say.
And when you move to a home that has a space, you're already kind of prepared for that. So
exactly. And containers give you flexibility too. Yep. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to be out of town for the weekend, so hey, I'm going to move this to a little bit of a shadier spot. So I'm going to water it really well, move it to a little bit of a shadier spot. It'll make it till I get back because I don't have somebody that can come by and water it. So it gives you opportunities to do different things too.
That is a really good point. Yep, for sure. Now, if you were to get started with veggie gardening right now at this very moment, with absolutely zero experience, what do you think would be the best starter kit that you would want to make for yourself?
So I think, and again, Mike can speak to it a lot more than I can. We've had some customers that have wanted to do it, and a lot of times what we've seen really popular is like a raised vegetable garden, one that might be just out of the ground, that sits maybe, what are they, 8 inches out of the ground, something like that, or even one that, if you don't feel like breaking your back from somebody, me and Mike are both a little bit taller, and Alex, of course, but if you don't want to have to bend over and do that work on the ground, they make these ones that are pretty nice that are up on legs. They get them up off the ground. So I would say just something like that with a basic veggie mix of soil. And then, that just makes it easier on you. It's a lower end investment to see if you really like it. Because if you're just getting started, you might think you love it. But again, it all comes back to just, dipping your toe in the water and seeing how much you like it. And so that's one that, again, we have actually assembled and installed plenty of them for people. They're becoming, in my opinion, increasingly popular because what I've always said, kind of the trend in housing is the houses are getting taller and the yards are getting smaller, and there's more and more of them going in, so there's less and less yard space. And so they might want to have a patio to enjoy, but they also want to have their vegetable garden. So you can put a raised vegetable garden, you can tuck it right up against the fence, and then, you have it there and accessible. So we're seeing more and more of that demand come into the market. And so that's one where I'd say it's a pretty user-friendly and homeowner-friendly way to get started into vegetable gardening.
Yeah. I mean, in raised beds, one of the main benefits of it is it gets your soil off of the ground. Yeah. So it eliminates some of the pest and insect issues and disease issues. It brings it closer to you, saves your back a little bit of the heartache. And it warms up faster, which is always nice if you're trying to start your vegetable garden a little bit earlier. So that is a great example. And then it incorporates what I was going to say, which is what you need is soil, plants, plant food, and most likely lime. And I'll explain the lime here in a second. But soil is important. You always invest as much into your soil as you do into your plants. It's where the plant's going to live. And in vegetable gardening, it's only going to progressively help you get better. Especially like think about containers. Okay, I've got a good potting soil. I invested in a nice potting soil.
Right.
And so therefore you can use it time and time again until it starts to wear a little bit thin. Same within the ground. Invest in some compost and perlite if you've got clay-based soil, because when you go to plant in there next season, and that's a longer discussion of crop rotation and all that, but at least you've invested the money and you're starting to incorporate nutrients and the beneficial bacterias and the organic matter from compost and different things. So all of that's good. So invest in your soil. Then of course you're going to need plants. So talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to the green team here at the garden center, talk to everybody that you can and do a little bit of planning, and then pick the plants that are appropriate. And then plant food. You're going to need plant food. So is that going to be an organic or traditional? Of course, I love, Espoma tones are great. And there's one that they make called garden tone. That's great for all vegetables and, whether it's spinach, lettuce, or tomatoes or peppers. They make specific ones for tomatoes. But if you're growing just a general purpose garden, get some garden tone. It's easy. It's self-explanatory. You can't mess it up. So that's kind of the next thing. And then I said lime because pH is very important to vegetables. It's not as important when we talk about landscape plants because we're selling plants that work in this area.
Yep.
Our area has a pretty acidic soil. So if you're growing in the ground, you're going to need to sweeten the soil, bring it up. Lime is what brings your pH up. Mm-hmm. So typically our average is 4.5 to 5.5. Most vegetables like it between a 6.5 and a 7. So you're going to have to bring it up a point or two. So that's easy to do with lime. We can help you figure out all of those things. We do free soil tests here at the garden center. So you can always bring in a soil test and we can find out exactly what your pH is. But also in containers, because what lime gives you is calcium. And that's usually, with lime, I typically recommend is called Magical. It's a fast-acting lime, which is calcium derived. So calcium is a huge part of vegetable gardening. When you start to vegetable garden, and if you ever get a black spot on the bottom of your tomato or the black spot on the bottom of your pepper, that's calcium deficiency. It's called blossom end rot. And so to prevent that, lime helps. So using some lime, a fertilizer or plant food that has a lot of calcium in it. And those are the things you need. Soil, plants, a little bit of plant food, a vessel. If you don't have the ground, you need something to grow in, but you can grow in so many different things. I mean, go get a 5-gallon bucket and drill some holes in the bottom. The possibilities are endless. So if you're thinking about getting into it, try it. It's very rewarding. I won't say instant, but it's within a season of gratification. So, I mean, you get to see the tomatoes starting to grow and then you start to say, how am I going to stake them? Or maybe you got a dwarf variety that's easy and you can just maintain it right there. So lots and lots of options. I say get into it. It's a lot of fun. It's super rewarding and a great, healthy thing that you can do.
Labor.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, now I listen to all this. I'd really actually want to get into it. So
I'll help you.
Oh, thank you. Sweet. All right. Well, I think that just wraps it up, guys. Any closing thoughts?
That's it.
Right, cool. We're getting close to our, I'll throw out, we're in the very beginnings of April.
Yes.
Our frost date is coming locally.
Yep.
So that's why we're talking about vegetables, because once we're past our frost date, it's free reign. So go plant those tomatoes, go plant those petunias, go plant begonias and have fun out there and enjoy the yard. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us. Next time, we're going to be talking about how to beat those moles and voles, a hot topic out there. So one that I've talked about many, many times. So we'll get into that next week, but thank you all for joining me and thanks for y'all watching. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, rate, review, all of those great things. And we'll see you next week.